NFL podcast will still be relevant in February.
Hope so. Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL podcast. My name is Dan Hansis. I come to you from a virtual room filled with some heroes, Greg Rosenthal, Mark Sessler, and boys, we finally have reached the end of the Yellow Brick Road. Week 17.
Whew, I'm just hoping to stay relevant into next week. Nothing is promised, Dan, but it does feel nice to get, to the end of the regular season and get to the new year. It's going to cheer up the Sessler household, I know.
Well, I think this year especially, aren't there a couple NFL teams that probably have that NBA bubble desire to escape all this and go off into the wilderness? We're ready to say goodbye to some, but there's a whole bunch of intrigue too. I think that, this year's Week 17 is packed with more enticing avenues and corners than I can remember in a long time. And I'm a little bit nervous about what's going to happen.
I was like, I don't know, for some reason I was really hanging on every word from Mark there. I was figuring out how he's going to land that sentence. This is a celebration. It's kind of like it's Sessler Day in a lot of ways, V-Day for Sessler, because all these kind of annoying teams, the teams that are hard to watch, the teams that are straight up bad, they all disappear after Week 17. And what's left is, now it used to be 12, now 14 of the best teams remaining. So we're going to, listen, because it's Week 17, we're going to talk about all 32 teams, and they all play on Sunday. It's the only week of the year where there is no Thursday night, there is no Monday night, there is just 16 games, a pigskin to dive into, and that's what we're going to do. So let's do it. And instead of doing the draft format, because it's a different week, because so much is on the line in the AFC and in the NFC with playoff bids, let's kind of group things together and talk about the games that matter most in clusters. And let's start, Mark, where we have to start in the AFC, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. And here we go, Mark. The Browns fall to the Jets in Week 16 in stunning fashion. And I know you're missing that wide receiver room. But, watching that game, Mark, the Browns just weren't ready to get the job done either way. I didn't think they played well. I didn't think it was a well-coached game. I thought it was a mess from Cleveland. And now they have a chance to get into the postseason by beating Mason Rudolph, of all people, who will be starting in the place of Ben Roethlisberger.
No, I'm with you a little bit. It was not Cleveland's best overall effort last week. They also found a lot of that stuff out on Saturday. It's hard to change things up. But this time around, it's like, look at it, creates this situation where you have to ask yourself, are the Cleveland Browns, is the DNA and the destiny of this team to get zapped by Corona, lose to the Jets, and then fall to a Mason Rudolph-led Steelers team in Week 17? I believe it is not. From what I'm hearing, they've had really good practices this week when they've been able to get together. This team has found a way. They have not lost 2 in a row all year. They have recovered from losses and played well the following weeks. So you have to hope that happens in this situation. The Browns have Corona issues. They may be undermanned in some situations, but the Steelers have a bunch of guys not in this game. TJ Watt will not be playing. Baker Mayfield right now ranks just below Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady in terms of his play-action passes. He has been really strong in that area. The Steelers' defense, however, has been number 1 against play-action passes, but they have guys out of the lineup. So if you're Cleveland, stick to who you are. Don't do what happened last week when you got away, I thought, script-wise from what the Browns are. Do what you do and make this thing happen. This is your week. Cleveland has not been to the playoffs since 2002. I was like a wandering idiot in the fields of Colorado back then when that happened. Can we now, in my adult life, make this occur? Otherwise, I'm going to jump out the window here. It's a first-floor window, but it's going to be a long Sunday.
Calm down, Mark. Mark, let's bring you back down to earth. Greg, go ahead.
Okay.
Colorado, if you hadn't been there, though, we would have missed out on hearing about your girlfriends and hanging out in the fields there. That gave you so much content, Colorado. 2002, by the way, Mark, was also the only time that an 11-win team since expansion did not make the playoffs. So the Browns have nothing to apologize for. That was the Patriots back then. If they get to 11, they don't have anything to apologize for. That said, I'm annoyed with this Week 17. It should be building up to a crescendo. And the fact that they changed the bye situation, it had some unintended consequences. I think it's a competitive issue for the NFL. They want to put out a good product, and you got Mason Rudolph starting like the biggest game of the year. You have TJ Watt sitting the biggest game of the year. It's a similar situation in Buffalo. I'm not sure what the competition committee can do about this. It's a really difficult thing. It's not the Steelers' fault. It's not really the Browns' fault. And I don't assume that the backup Steelers are definitely going to lose. We saw the backup Steelers win a game much like this back in 2004 against the Bills. So you never know what could happen. But if Myles Garrett shows up, and Olivier Vernon, by the way, who's been great, shows up the way that he's played the last few weeks, I think they get it done. And it feels a little fitting for Garrett to take it down, put 2019 behind him, and go get to the playoffs. This is why he makes all that money.
And if you look on the other side of this, yes, where the Steelers are sitting their best players, but there is obvious bad blood about how things turned out at the end of that last season. So it seems like there's something poetic and perhaps poetic justice from the Steelers standpoint if they now have the chance with Rudolph to knock the Browns out of the playoffs. And it should be said the Browns can still make the playoffs even with a loss. I believe the Titans also lose, the Browns get in. So it's not winning in necessarily for the Browns, but there is that, the Colts actually it is, if the Colts lose. There is that kind of vibe hanging in the air. And Mark, I'm with you as a fan of a similarly pained team. You worry about these things in the air and the cosmic pain of being a Browns fan. But that said, they have always risen to the challenge this season, except for last week. And you can mark down the COVID there. I think they'll do it again. I like the Browns a lot this week. Yeah,
I don't know about this poetic justice for the Steelers knocking Cleveland out of the playoffs. I mean, they've kicked Cleveland around for 2 decades. I mean, enough with that business.
Right. I'm talking about the incident, of course, with Mason Rudolph and Myles Garrett and how that would be poetic justice from the Pittsburgh side of things. Does anybody, Mark, so how confident are you 1 to 10 right now that the Browns are playing playoff football? Give me a 1 to 10 with your confidence level they're playing a wild card weekend.
I believe in them. I think they're more confident than I am. I'd put it at about a 3. After what happened last week, I just wonder if the football gods are kind of like laughing behind the scenes at me and people like me. So,
well, they're getting their offensive line back. To me, last week, the offensive line and their linebackers and their defensive backs were the biggest issue. And the offensive line, which is the identity of this team, gets Jedrick Willis back, gets Wyatt Teller back. And you're playing against the Steelers front line, who I think are the guys that are going to sit. They're the over 30 players. They better roll in this game. I don't even think it's going to be competitive.
No excuses. Baker, light up the Steelers and roll into January. All right, up next. Speaking of the AFC North, the Baltimore Ravens, they are as hot as any team in football right now. 4 straight wins. And you look at the numbers, Greg, of Lamar Jackson since he came off the COVID-19 list a month ago, and they compare favorably to his MVP season. He's playing at that level again, and it seems like Baltimore is heading into the playoffs with a head full of steam, and here are the Cincinnati Bengals ready to be steamrolled.
You would think so. Now, the Bengals are playing more competitively lately, but their defense still gave up 31 points last week to the Texans. The Lamar Jackson experience has been partly about the opponents they played. They've played bad defenses, but it's also about him just trying to make plays in the running game. They're using their spread formation to get J.K. Dobbins out in space. That's helped a lot. They got a ton of speed, and Lamar's just taken off more. He's being more decisive. There's no reason to think that they're not going to put up 35 points this week, get into the playoffs, and they're the team I don't think anyone wants to face. I think one reason, by the way, the Steelers won't mind losing that game is because their most likely opponent in the wild card round is the Browns, and they can avoid the Ravens. Nobody wants to play this Ravens team, Mark.
I'm with you. I think Lamar Jackson is a man at ease with himself right now. So different than a month ago over the past 4 weeks. He has his completion percentage, his passer rating, his yards rushing per game are higher than his MVP levels from a year ago. So you're getting that version of the Ravens. And Dan, you predicted a couple weeks ago that they would run the table, and I think they can take care of the Bengals. I think the Bengals offensive line has been more consistently of late. Their screen game is working. Brandon Allen lit up the Texans, so they're a little more frisky than you would expect, but not frisky enough to take out the Ravens, who are playing playoff football right now. They are that team, and I'm with you. The Steelers want nothing to do with the Ravens a week from now.
There's no outcome I'm more confident in than the Ravens whipping up on the Bengals in this game and taking care of business. I said I thought they'd win their last 5, get that 5 seed. I think that's all in play here for the Ravens, and it is interesting how last year Baltimore goes 14-2. They're a berserker team going through the AFC. They get the number 1 seed, and then, it all goes down in flames in the first round against Tennessee. They're not going to have the bye this week. They're not going to be playing home games in their building, most likely in the playoffs if they get there. But I feel better about this Baltimore team. It's almost like last year and the year before, it was like when the Baltimore Ravens got to the playoffs, it was like, oh, but can Lamar get the monkey off his back? They can't get it done in January. You're not hearing that as much because the team is entering the playoffs in a much different way. I think that's good for them too.
Their defense is banged up, and I hear you. It reminds me a little bit of Peyton Manning, who I think needed to get into the wild card round before he finally won a playoff game. Like, sometimes that's just the way to do it, get the monkey off your back. But all that flies out the window if they get stuck against Buffalo. I mean, the Ravens have been beating up on some poor sisters in the NFL, and if they get stuck going to Buffalo next week, they're still heavy underdogs to me. But I do like the way they've kind of adjusted to those defensive injuries, and they got to feel good heading into the playoffs.
You're being a little sneaky dismissive of Baltimore the last couple of shows, Greg. I don't know what it's about. I love the Bills as much as anybody, but I don't think they are going to be get rolled over by anybody right now. This Ravens team, we're on, I guess, different pages there.
We are. I mean, they've got a lot of players missing in their secondary, in their front line. Not much of a pass rush. I think that matters more than you're letting on, Danny.
Okay. You could imagine you two on different pages. I mean, the Ravens have just started so strong the last couple of weeks. I mean, I don't. I'm with you, Dan. I don't. They're a steamroller. Get
100-0 this game. We'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back. Let's continue to roll through the AFC side of things and take a look at the Miami Dolphins and Buffalo Bills. And big news comes down on Thursday that Ryan Fitzpatrick will be out of action. He is connected to the COVID-19 protocols, and that takes a lot of juice away from this game. It creates a lot of concerns as well, obviously, because after what we saw, peak Fitzmagic last week, to have him now out of the picture entirely, Mark, that's a bummer.
You know, the one thing that you looking into Ryan Fitzpatrick, that he's really been marvelous in the reliever role. If they wanted to use him that way, you know, Greg, you made a point in a previous show that they maybe didn't want to start Fitzpatrick because the interceptions creep up, but his tossing the ball on low percentage throws late in games in relief of Tua, he has been fantastic. So that role is stripped away. and you have to work with Tua through a game. The reason he was benched last week was 3 straight 3-and-outs that produced -6 yards on drives. So you can't get into these slumps. And there have been these hot and cold ebb and flow moments with Tua at quarterback. I think it just raises a lot of concern. It just does. And you have to wonder what happens next for the Dolphins with the rest of this situation. But they're extremely well coached in every phase, and I trust them to give the Bills a fight. But the Bills, to me, feel like a nuclear power right now.
But they're not going to be the Bills. This is another problem for the NFL, I think, in Week 17. That we should be building to a game like this. Everyone all week is like, well, I wonder, if Sean McDermott's going to be playing his starters. I think there's been a lot of assuming that he is. Why? They're not playing Josh Allen for 4 quarters. I know they haven't said anything, but when Sean McDermott says, well, I'm not giving that information away, but we're going to do what's smart for our team. Here's what's smart for your team. Not getting Cole Beasley hurt in the 4th quarter of last week's game. The second that happened, I thought they're not playing anybody next week. They don't care about the 2-3 seed. They already know the Steelers are resting. The 2 seed might not even matter because the Steelers could lose the first round. A million different things could happen. They're getting that 2 seed. And they're not going to be playing Josh Allen through 4 quarters. It would be crazy. Matt Milano's been banged up. Anyone you're concerned about, Stephon Diggs, they're on a short week. And oh, by the way, they could be on a short week next week too, because half the teams are playing on Saturday. I think they're going to lay down and let the Dolphins get into the playoffs. Can their backups give Tua a competition? Maybe, but that's hard to predict.
Hey, Dan, Greg is in a bad mood. I would watch out how you proceed here. He is very
I'm
good.
annoyed. I love the NFL, and the NFL. It's because I love the NFL that you got to figure out this Week 17.
Right. You're a stern father, with a ruler slapping. Yeah, the Cole Beasley thing was unfortunate. In that Monday night game, the Bills killing the Patriots. You have Stephon Diggs on the bench. You have Josh Allen on the bench. And Beasley's out there. And I remember thinking to myself before it happened, because I had talked about it on the previous show, that Beasley had a chance to become a 1,000-yard receiver for the last time. They're trying to get that guy to 1,000 yards, a big personal milestone. So it's really a bummer that that's the way it played out. It kind of reminded me of Wes Welker with the Patriots years ago, blowing out his knee in a meaningless Week 17. But, I think also, Greg, yes, it's a bummer that the second seed doesn't matter as much, especially this year, because you don't have that home field advantage. But, I mean, the Bills still have something to gain by being the second seed. If anything ever happened to the Chiefs, who aren't world beaters right now, it could be the Bills that are potentially hosting the AFC title game in Western New York. That's not nothing.
I don't think they think that way, though, because they know a million different things. They just prioritize what's more important. The main thing is getting our guys healthy to the wild card game. And they also know, because Mike Tomlin told them, that the Steelers are laying down. So they don't need to win this game, the Bills. I would be stunned if Matt Barkley isn't in this game in the first half. I know they haven't, come out and said it. Tua Tagovailoa has got to play better. I think part of his problem is everyone watched that primetime game, and I think it was his worst game of the entire season. He needs to bounce back. I don't know if it was the defense they were showing him or the moment, but he's playing too conservatively, and that's the difference between him and Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick throws to guys who are covered. Tua's got to learn how to do that.
It's amazing how many short passes Tua is throwing, and I'm doing some research of the game, all these games, about how efficient Tua is and how he doesn't throw interceptions. Well, watch some of these throws he's making. They're so high percentage, but when you throw so many high percentage throws, there's not going to be a lot of payoff. Whereas you have, this is my favorite stat, and I love our friends at the NFL Media Research Team. Fitzpatrick's 34-yard completion to Mac Hollins with 19 seconds to play against the Raiders last week had a 10.9% completion percentage. 4th most improbable completion of the season. It just stinks that Fitzpatrick is not in the picture for this game, and it's a bummer.
Or next week, potentially. Or next week if they make it.
And remember, he's been playing. He came into the league in 2005 as a 7th-round pick out of Harvard, has never been in the playoffs. So it's crushing to him that he doesn't have a chance to play in this game and maybe is out of the picture. Let's move on. Check out the Tennessee Titans at Houston Texans. And, the Titans, Mark, outclassed a little bit on Sunday night by the Packers. How concerned were you by that game and that performance?
I'm not overly concerned. I mean, that game had a weather element too. The Titans, to me, they are who they are on offense. I'm consistently concerned about their defense, but not this week. I'm not too concerned. I mean, the Houston Texans, when we used to go to big New Year's Eve parties and You'd sleep over and you'd wake up the next day and there'd be like a guy asleep on the floor. And it's like, you've got to go. That's the Texans. We've seen enough. Their defense has been in off-season mode for a month. And, you have Brandon Allen throwing for nearly 400 yards on them last week. I see nothing stopping Tennessee here. The only question is if our friend Derrick Henry can get to 2,000 yards. It's asking a lot after what happened in Green Bay. It's 200-plus yards, but you never know. I don't think that's going to be their plan. We talk about resting players.
In Week 17 to become the 8th player to 2,000. I would say it's impossible, but then you look at the opponent and you look at the stakes. The Texans, and I think Henry already has a 200-yard game against Houston this year. I would not rule it out, especially if this game starts going Tennessee's way and Henry starts sniffing it, that they start feeding him the ball. Again, Greg, you're going to get into that conversation. Well, is that the smart thing to do if you have a playoff spot locked up and you got Henry rushing the ball 30 times? These things matter to the players and to the organizations, and I think 2,000 yards might keep Henry on the field if he gets within sniffing distance.
Yeah, he would be the one guy that feels like the exception because he's a superhuman bionic man that suffers no injuries. That said, he leads the league in carries already with over 340. He led the league last year with 304. So he's already had 40 more carries this season than he had all of last year. That'll be a tricky game to play, but that would be like a good thing for the Texans because it would mean that they're eating another 40 burger. They got 4 40 burgers this year, Dan. I think they could make a 5. Like they are eating as well as those squirrels outside your house lately. Good eating.
Yeah, in this weird year of 2020, Mark, you brought up New Year's Eve and like having setting things up and thinking about partying. I now have a squirrel that I feed in my backyard as I look for human connection in a world that has gone awry. The one thing, the fly in the ointment for the Tennessee Titans is Deshaun Watson here, because Tennessee's defense is not good. It's the worst defense of the playoff contenders and the Super Bowl contenders out there by far statistically. You see it every time, it seems like. In their 5 losses, in fact, the Titans have allowed almost 35 points a game. So they get lit up in these games when they lose. And Deshaun Watson is playing outrageous football. He's on a team with 4 wins, and he has a passer rating over 110. So there is a scenario here where Deshaun Watson is lighting up the Titans' defense in Week 17, and things get hairy.
Yeah, I mean, he leads the league, and the Texans do, in percentage of throws of 20-plus yards. I mean, and we've seen that, and they're exciting to watch because of that, and they keep games close despite their defense. But I can't believe that we've just shot by a comment about Dan feeding wild squirrels in his yard. There are so many things that could go wrong there, but I understand
He's not wild anymore.
Connection.
It's actually a girl.
You said
Her
it's
name
a
is
human
Gus.
connection. Like you're looking for human connection, but they're not human. They're squirrels. But the
what
most
I can
amazing
get.
thing to me is that you can tell the different squirrels apart because the obvious thing is already starting to happen. Different squirrels are coming. They heard that Dan's got some good food, and now they're coming to the yard.
This is like Howard Hughes behavior, just throwing it out there. So
it is, and you know what? Like I'm just embracing that I might be going crazy. I mean, it is what it is. I actually don't have a huge problem with it. All right, let's move on. Yeah, so Tennessee has a chance to get that wild card spot with an 11th win. Now there's the Indianapolis Colts, who have the easiest path to victory in Week 17 because they have the worst team in the league, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have lost 14 straight games. There's literally no way to build a case for the Colts losing this game. I was going to say the Jags have already clinched the number 1 overall pick, so they have nothing to gain from losing anymore. So perhaps, Gardner Minshew comes in and there's some magic and the Colts go home, scratching their heads. Nah, they're going to take care of business here, right, Greg?
They should, but the case is pretty simple, that the Jaguars beat them in Week 1. That's their 1 win. It was a weird game. The Colts dominated it. But
that's
the Jaguars
a long time ago, Greggy.
I know, but they've kind of dominated this series for a while, and the coaches are the same, Doug Marrone and Frank Reich. It's strange. I don't expect it. And you mentioned the Colts have the easiest matchup, but they've got the toughest route to the playoffs. They're on the outside looking in. If the Titans somehow lose, the Colts can still win the division. But the way it's shaping up with the Bills potentially resting starters, with the Steelers resting starters, I think all these teams have a good chance to get to 11-5, and that means the Colts would only be the second team since the last expansion to win 11 games and not make the playoffs. And I'm sad about it. I wanted to see Phillip Rivers and this Colts team. Maybe they will get in. They'll get lucky and get helped out somewhere else. But there's a good chance that collapse against the Steelers in the second half kind of ends up defining their season.
That doesn't feel right for them to miss if they get to 11. But what I love about this, because there's a lot of hubbub about whether you do this or not, they are hiding out of town scores. So the players can't see, play the game blind, do it the best you can. I love that. The Colts team, there's a lot to like. I think they're balanced. But I also watched the way that they were detonated by Tennessee a couple weeks ago, the way the Ravens beat them up in the second half. The way that they collapsed to Pittsburgh. They had one converted third down in the second half of that game. So they're a little bit of a tricky team to get totally behind, but they are a playoff level team to me. So we'll see how this shakes out.
It's striking, and we talked about it. I thought that was one of the strangest games of the 2020 season, how the Colts were so in control at halftime against the Steelers. And then just the Steelers flipped a switch. And to me, it was kind of telling in the way that, as bad as the Steelers had been in the 4 weeks previous, it's a reminder that the Steelers and these other AFC superpowers have a higher gear. And when they flip that switch, they play at a higher level than the Colts can. So as much as I like the Colts, I've never been in love with this Colts team because I don't think it's ever been a team that you could say is great. It's a good team, and it's a good team that can miss the playoffs even if they get to 11 wins. Greg, here's just a little more shading on your point. Since the expansion to a 12-team postseason in 1990, only one of 208 teams have won 11 games in a season and missed the playoffs. And who was it that missed, Greggy?
Tom Brady's Super Bowl defense, his first one, 2002.
Incorrect. It was the year after
the Matt Castle Patriots.
After
the Matt
18-1 when Tom Brady tore his ACL and Matt Castle came on and got them to 11-5. Still no playoffs. Greg, you got to know that. You just got to know it. We'll be right back.
Too many Super Bowl trophies in Greg's closet there.
Brain freeze. That was another AFC East they tied for and missed the playoffs.
I teed you up on that one, Greg. We'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back. All right, let's swing over to the NFC here and dig in on a messy game. Arizona Cardinals and LA Rams. And why is it messy? The quarterback situation. You have Jared Goff, who is not going to play after thumb surgery. Enter John Wolford of the Alliance of American Football and most recently practice squad of the LA Rams. And then on the other side of things, Mark, you have the Arizona Cardinals, who have a banged up Kyler Murray nursing a knee injury suffered late in their Week 16 loss to the 49ers.
Yeah, I love that our friend Jordan Rodriguez from The Athletic pointed out that John Wolford is one of maybe the only quarterbacks around to have an active LinkedIn profile. He didn't know he was going to be here as much as we didn't know at this point. The Ramily, they're in a fix. They're in a bit of a fix.
What
you do have, you have your defense.
What is this footage? What is this from, like 1991?
This is the preseason, 2019.
Were we not using agency cameras?
Not exactly a hi-fi scenario there, high def, but I would just point to this. You have Jalen Ramsey, you have Vic Fangio obsessed Brandon Staley's defense, and Ramsey, he put it to Hopkins last time. He didn't have a catch over 10 yards. He held to 3 receptions. So that doesn't change, whoever's playing for quarterback. And Greg, can you see a scenario where maybe Wolford comes in and brings a little life to this offense that's had its ups and downs?
Oh, yeah. I love it. This guy, they list him at 6'1". He used to be listed at 5'11". Reminds me of Doug Flutie a little bit back there. If you showed some AAF tape of him on the hot shots, that's what got him into the NFL. He was slinging it. I mean, he can make plays with his feet. He seems like he's confident. I think he'll throw it deep. I think he's going to be one of those backups that goes down fighting. Either it goes terribly, and that's possible, or he gives them a little spark and is running around and is a lot of fun to watch. He was literally working in finance and was out of football until your Jets, Danny, called him up. I think it was in 2018. They needed another camp arm. He looked good. And he wasn't on the practice squad this year, Dan. He came into the year as the backup, I think, because Sean McVay likes him. I'm excited to see Sean McVay with a quarterback other than Jared Goff. Let's see if Sean McVay can be like Kyle Shanahan and get his backups to be productive.
This is the season of, constant takedowns of the number 1 and number 2 picks in the 2000 NFL draft. Everyone wants to tee off on Jared Goff. Everyone's teeing off on Carson Wentz. So now we have this thing where Jared Goff, because he's struggling, now we're going to paint it as this is a good thing for the Rams.
Wolford, not a good thing, but could be fun to watch.
John Wolford is going to now join up with Sean McVay and light up the Cardinals. And I had a similar conversation. I hear the similar hokum from Matt Money Smith on the Power Ranking show a few days ago when he said he had covered and done play-by-play on some AAF games, and Wolford is going to do RPO, and Sean McVay is having a field day, scheming up ways. All right, let's see how it goes. And look, here's that footage again. Like, here we go. Let's see what Wolford can do in a big spot. I think it's more Jared Goff residual anger playing into the analysis here.
Hey, who's the better coach? Do you trust Sean McVay or Cliff Kingsbury? Because I am left a little wanting watching this Cliff Kingsbury offense. Who's got the better players? Who's got Aaron Donald? Who's got Jalen Ramsey? I was all ready to lock this thing up if Goff and Cooper Kupp were playing. I'm not bold enough to do it with Wolford, but I did pick them in my game picks column. I think the Rams can still get this win. The Rams can get into the playoffs, though, if they lose, if the Bears lose their game.
And real quick, Greg, I'm with you. I think you watch Cliff Kingsbury's games. There are moments, especially in the red zone or inside the 2-minute warning, where time management and decisions have haunted the Cardinals. And the only belief is Kyler Murray. Simone, my wife, calls him that fast little guy because he is. And he's enjoyable to watch, but he's been inconsistent too. I'm not sure which team I trust more here.
I mean, I'm picking the Rams because, like Greg says, Sean McVay, I trust him. He's got the pelts on the wall over Cliff Kingsbury. And then the Rams, Sean McVay may not have Jared Goff or an offense he could trust right now, but he still has that defense. And we've seen all season long with the Cardinals, their trait is when Kyler Murray is not special, the Cardinals are not special. And I just don't like what I'm hearing about him, where he's at physically and in general, the inconsistent nature of this offense in the second half of the season. I don't think it's going to be, a blowout in the favor of the Rams, but I think they're going to take care of business. And I should mention, because I haven't yet, this is a win and in playoff scenario for both teams. The Rams could also make the playoffs with a loss and a Bears loss versus the Packers. The Cardinals are eliminated from playoff contention with the loss. They're out if they don't win this game. Interesting. All right, let's move on. Up next, Green Bay Packers head to Soldier Field to face the Bears. How about them Chicago Bears? 3 straight wins. They're scoring 30 points every week. Mitch Trubisky is having a field day, playing with confidence. David Montgomery's putting up 130 total yards every week and a touch. You have Allen Robinson on pace for 1,300 yards. This offense is humming right now. So all of a sudden, with the Bears in their own situation, winning in the playoffs, the Packers might have a battle on their hands, Mark.
I think they do. I mean, this is a different Bears team than the one that we've prodded fun at for years. And you're getting a different version of David Montgomery in the ground game to start. Now you can look who they played in recent weeks. It's not been the high elites of the NFL. And their offensive line has thrived. The run game has thrived. I think a lot of it starts there. Trubisky playing better. You still get the same mistakes. I'm just saying, how do you stop this Packers offense? Okay. I right now think that A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones have been, look at what happened in Tennessee. What a 1-2 punch. Devontae Adams, unstoppable. I am confidently locking this up for the Packers. Confidently.
He wanted. It didn't sound that confident.
No, you didn't start out that
about
way.
How good the Bears were looking. Are you kidding me? I'm much more confident. I hate that we have the same lock. I knew Mark wanted to get it out there first. I mean, I thank Mitchell Trubisky for winning these 4 games in a row to make it possible for me to lock against him in Week 17 against the Packers. Are you kidding me? Has anyone watched these games? Because I'm telling you, Mitchell Trubisky hasn't even played well 2 of the last 4 weeks. It reminds me so much of 2018, where he got a lot of credit for wide open receivers. The offense is playing well, no doubt. Matt Nagy or Bill Lazor, whoever's calling plays, is in his bag. You know, they're running well. Allen Robinson is awesome. But I think Jair Alexander can take Allen Robinson out. And when you take Robinson out, they just don't have much. Trubisky's been throwing up a couple passes per game that the other team should take away, or he's fumbling the ball. And I don't trust this Bears defense. Even though they've been solid all year, I don't think they get to Aaron Rodgers. And I don't think this game is that close. I feel great about getting the chance to lock up the Packers in Week 7.
I'm with you.
And then you have the situation with the top of the NFC. We've been lamenting how Week 17 has been deflated some by this adding of the playoff spot and the removing of the second bye. But in this game, it doesn't get affected because the Packers can lose that number 1 seed that they currently sit in if they don't win. They have everything to play for. The bye in the first round, everything going through Lambeau Field in the NFC. And that's why, of course, I'm locking up the Packers, too.
This is so boring.
This is unprecedented, of course. We have not done this all season long, but this is a weird week. We like to play the mirror test with Vegas, and we want to make sure we pick a game that's within the realm of reason in terms of the competition level. But when you do have the chance to pick Aaron Rodgers closing out, what is it? And I know, Greg, you keep on saying it's a battle. This MVP race is over. Patrick Mahomes isn't even playing in Week 17. I like Josh Allen and what he's been able to do the last 6 weeks to get back in the race. But Rodgers has a chance to throw for close to 50 touchdowns this year with a passer rating of 120. He's going to close this thing out. And the Bears, yes, it does feel, with all due respect to the people of Chicago, like this has been a mirage against some hideous defenses. Wake-up call coming. They're going to make us look so bad. The Bears are going to win. You know it now.
Well, this is bad strategy by you, Dan. You're 3 back with 5 weeks to play, and you're locking up the same games. Bad strategy. I would just get off of it. But
I'm just trying to win.
Trubisky, I know, but you got to hope for catching up. You know, treading water.
Not worried about that. Another day. Another day, Greg.
Isn't it Trubisky? Wouldn't it be the most Bears thing ever to do all this and then lose 2 straight to back into the playoffs, which I think could happen if the Cardinals lose. The Bears still get in, and then you end up losing this week, and then you get blasted by the Saints or someone next week, and it's like, oh, that was a deflating way to
then re-sign Mitch Trubisky.
and Greg and Mark, did you notice? Greg, who says he doesn't care about the locks competition, knew absolutely where the standings were, just off the top of his head.
What I found is that there were a couple years, Dan, where you and I were vying for the title, and Greg was a little bit farther back. That was when the apathy crept in, and this segment's not working. We don't like the locks. It's not. I
want to get rid of the locks.
Everyone else does locks, but now Greg is plugged in. We get it.
I'm getting rid of it. I'm getting rid of it after winning. If you win 2 in a row,
you're not getting rid of anything.
We'll be right back after this. Victory presented by the United States Marine Corps. All right, Sunday Night Football. Al, Chris, Michelle, and the world will watch the NFC East get decided. The Washington football team win, and they're the NFC East champs. That's it. It's as simple as that for Washington. They are against the Philadelphia Eagles team, which is the only team that is not in contention for the NFC East crown entering Week 17, which tells you everything you need to know about how their season went. Greg, I feel like a lot of my confidence in Washington is rooted in if Alex Smith is playing, because everything else about this team I like in this matchup.
Yeah, I like that they have Antonio Gibson back is huge. Alex Smith did practice on Thursday, so it's trending towards him playing. Now, he wasn't playing as well his last few starts that we saw him out there even before the calf injury as he was when he first came into the lineup, but at least it makes it a great story on Sunday night. Like, this is the game they had to show because it was the one that made sense, that there won't be any teams eliminated. And
NBC,
seeing Alex Smith
finish
off NBC, that's right, on Sunday night, like finish off the Comeback of the Year award would be pretty awesome against this Eagles team, which is just playing out the string and is so banged up. I know they have Jalen Hurts, but the rest of the team, especially on defense, is so banged up right now.
I'm with you, Greg. It's like we were ready to give Alex Smith Comeback Player of the Year if he came in and did a kneel down. I mean, just to even come back and be in uniform. The fact that the coaching staff so clearly said, all along, this is the guy we trust. I think that he can do a lot pre-snap that you're not going to get from the other quarterbacks on that roster. This needs to be about Washington's rookie class, though, too. Chase Young, Antonio Gibson, these guys are key to this team. And it's incredible to me. These teams met back in week one when I thought Philly could be a Super Bowl team. Their quarterback of the future, Carson Wentz, is nowhere to be seen right now. And it's Philadelphia and Washington, with Washington a chance to win the NFC East. I'm sorry, I didn't see that coming. Check me at the door if you did.
Jalen Hurts lingers as an X factor in this game, of course, because he's had, explosive moments since taking over for Wentz. He was, I don't want to say exposed by the Cowboys defense last week, but he came down to earth in those last three quarters against Dallas. So it makes me think that if the Dallas defense could figure out Jalen Hurts a little bit, this Washington front seven can do the same thing. And it should be noted that, yes, we don't know about Alex Smith right now. We know Dwayne Haskins isn't the quarterback because Ron Rivera cut the guy early this week, the 15th overall pick in the 2019 NFL draft. He is gone, and that was obviously a display of power from Ron Rivera, who never liked this guy, never liked the way he played or how he prepared. So they move forward, and it does beg the question, and I trust Ron Rivera, Greg, but why create that distraction in the locker room entering this game when you could just sit Haskins on the bench or have him inactive and handle that in the offseason?
Well, I wonder if it was a move that was appreciated in the locker room. That it might be something that the team, I don't know this, but Haskins put them, in jeopardy. Okay. Tyler Heineke comes in there and looks good. And maybe the team likes it. It's funny because we always say, well, week one doesn't mean anything. And you never know what you're going to get in week one. Week one between these teams kind of told us everything. The Washington defense was awesome. The defensive backs that Ron Rivera is really a specialty coach, making them better, were awesome in that game. Kendall Fuller, Ronald Darby, Chase Young was awesome. Haskins was brutal in that week one game, and Carson Wentz was kind of a mess. And the Eagles started getting injured. That week one game told us a lot about how this season was going to go.
I would also say this was probably appreciated. I mean, sorry, but Dwayne Haskins, did you really grasp this opportunity on and off the field? I could point to 18 or 19 things to suggest that you did not. And I think that Ron Rivera needs someone who's all in. And he basically told the rest of the team, if you want to act like that, you're not going to be on this team. You can be working a different job somewhere else in society. Sayonara.
Obligatory Dwayne Haskins defense. I did not grasp many opportunities when I was 23 either. He is right now
you weren't
not
given
wired
one like this, but
for the NFL, obviously. Before we
he'll get a job. He'll definitely get another opportunity.
He will. Before we move on, what would it take? Here's a fun little game, Mark. What would it take for Alex Smith not to get Comeback Player of the Year award? And I'm just going to present one scenario. You tell me if it's going to lead to him not getting the trophy. In this finale game, he starts, goes 11 for 27 for 81 yards, 6 interceptions, and he's ejected in the fourth quarter for headbutting Sean Hockley, the referee. Does he still get the trophy?
That would make it very edgy because, it's the last thing we think about. But I'd have to say the only thing that could probably knock him out of there is like if Brett Favre came in and won a Packers game in the playoffs in relief of Aaron Rodgers. It's got to be Alex Smith. But the headbutt thing, that's thorny.
I mean, that's at hockey.
It would be a Sessler scenario. It would be a Sessler scenario where the asteroid finally hits us. That's the only thing that stops.
Yeah, no vote logged. Yes.
That is the road to victory presented by the United States Marine Corps. We'll be right back. All right, let's check out the other NFC East matchup because obviously huge playoff ramifications there as well. The Dallas Cowboys coming off 3 consecutive wins, including a blowout of the Eagles last week that knocked the Eagles out of the playoffs. They now travel to the Meadowlands to face the G-Men. And this is very simple, Mark. The winner clinches the NFC East with a win, and then they sit on their couches and hope that Washington loses Sunday night.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like we flip every week which NFC East team we would prefer to see in January. Right now, it's arrow up for me on Dallas. And I think if you look back at this season, there was a stretch where Kellen Moore had to game plan for 4 Cowboys quarterbacks in 5 games. That's rough. That's not easy to do, alongside a defense that back then was just a wide open barn door saying, come right through, dance along to the end zone. Well, that's not the case now. They played a little bit better on defense. And the Giants, we were high on a few weeks ago.
Barn?
Well, dance out the I don't know if you're going in the barn, out, a lot of dancing, a lot of achieving touchdowns and field goals. And we were high on the Giants, and the Giants ran into the AFC North, didn't they? I mean, the Giants team, I'm kind of like, interesting, see you next year.
Yeah, Daniel Jones admitted this week he's been limited in terms of trying to make plays outside the pocket. That's a problem because, they're going up against a pass rush that's been getting better. We were talking comeback player of the year. In a normal year, Randy Gregory might be a nice option. He has been balling for Dallas, and he has been through a lot. It hasn't been in the NFL very often. He's playing great. Another comeback player of the year, how about Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, playing well lately, making the offensive line look better. But when I heard this week that Jerry Jones was in such a good mood on his radio appearance that he said he's been dancing around the house because they got a chance to make the playoffs, I thought, oh, they're gonna lose. I mean, there's. How does he not remember?
I thought about locking up the Cowboys, Greg, because, it seems like everything's going in their direction. But every time you get on board with the Dallas Cowboys, they stick it in your face and say, you should not have trusted us. So I'm not doing it this week. However, I am picking Dallas to win this game because you look at the Giants, since their Week 11 bye, this is how many points they've scored in every game. 19 and 17 in 2 wins, and then 7, 6, and 13 in 3 losses consecutively. They can't score points. And even if Daniel Jones was healthy, I don't know if I would totally trust them. So I think the Cowboys and their offense and those 3 wide receivers and Zeke even looking better last week, they should take care of business here and be on the couch with hope against what with Washington's playing.
What could go wrong?
I'm taking the Giants, made of tougher stuff.
Ooh, I like that. How about you, Sessler?
I'm going Cowboys. I think it'll be close. They'll make it dramatic, but Dallas is the team right now that's peaking.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's check in on the lock of the week standings. Killer loss for me. Cardinals last week let me down. Greg and Mark still battling it out at the top of the standing. Oh, my, Ricky, shame on you, Erica. No lock in week 16. That's part of your job as our producer, Ricky Hollywood. The standings don't say it, but I'm docking you. That's a loss. That's a forfeit for your malfeasance, and that will be adjusted.
Yeah, usually, if I just act like a toddler and pound my fist and refuse to do anything, I get my way.
No, not this time. You're
not
taking
as an adult.
Be better, Ricky, in 2021. All right, let's get to the rest of the game. I didn't want to be so stern there, Erica, but I'm very upset not making that lock. We got 3 more games to get to. Saints at Panthers. Erica, your thoughts on this one?
I mean, do we need to talk about this one?
We do. It's how the game. It's how the show works.
That's what comes up next on the show. I mean, so we've learned Ricky doesn't have anything to say about the Saints-Panthers.
No,
we've learned she cheats if she falls behind, and then she just quits in a competition. But you know who's not quitting? The Saints. They're starting to dominate on both sides of the line. They need this win. They're trying to get that bye.
Moving on.
Greg said it all.
Do you have something to add, Erica? I don't want to railroad you there.
Now I don't. Now I'm mad.
We are flying right now. The Seattle Seahawks at the San Francisco 49ers. Mark, the Seahawks need a W here. Are they going to get it?
I think they will, although, watching what the Niners did to the Cardinals, I just, there could be one more trick up the sleeves of Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh, who probably is going to get a coaching job somewhere else, their last chance to work together potentially. I would not coast into this one if I was Seattle. Erica, would you like to add a word or two? I feel like you haven't had a chance to talk.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you, Mark. I also feel like just when we count the 49ers out, they do sort of sometimes take the Seahawks by surprise. So I feel like it's going to be a better game than people are expecting.
All right. And, it's just going to turn into another Robert Saleh photo shoot. His agent is loving the coverage of all 49ers games this year. Finally, the Atlanta Falcons at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Man, the Bucs, Greg, are finishing strong here.
They are. It started in the second half of that Falcons game. The Falcons, though, are the best 4-11 team of all time, I think. I mean, they've lost 4 straight games by less than 1 score, like 2-8 in 1-score games. They faced the second toughest schedule in the league. Like, they're a good team. This will probably be interesting.
There you go. I want everybody to enjoy the football games. We can't wait to watch them. And a special thanks to the United States Marine Corps for being our sponsor all season long. Yes, Week 17. Let's get at it.
We made it.